Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here this morning as we continue our Connecting to Practice professional development series. We're thrilled to welcome so many ISAC team members from every division in the agency, as well as our partners from across the P20 continuum, and this time, practitioners from direct service organizations that provide vital supports to students from birth through education into the workforce and beyond. I'd like to thank the team from ISAC who put this event together, our comms team, IT, building services, procurements, our college access staff, and of course, we couldn't do this without the support of our entire exec staff team. Thank you. I'd like to also thank Family Action Network, our primary partner for professional development at ISAC. Many of you are repeat attendees for our author events, and they are made possible through our partnership with FAN. If you're interested in information about how your organization can also become a sponsor of FAN, I'd be happy to talk to you about that after this event. And now, the reason we are here today, please welcome Marc Brackett, author of the best-selling book for this, Permission to Feel, now translated into 27 languages. He's the founding director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, professor in the Child Study Center at Yale University, and the lead developer of some of your favorite things, Ruler, an evidence-based framework for cultivating emotional intelligence that is currently in use at 5,000 schools across the world. For a discussion of his newest book, Dealing with Feeling, Use Your Emotions to Create the Life You Want. I know some of you were already chit-chatting before this about how it has already been life-altering after reading this book. And Marc will be in conversation with Dr. Teresa Ramos, the inaugural Illinois Secretary of Early Childhood, who was most recently prior to this, the first Assistant Deputy Governor for Education, and prior to that had leading roles in the development of IDHE's strategic plan, A Thriving Illinois, as well as in state education funding reforms. We are about to have an hour of discussion, followed by time for audience Q&A. If we have time for book personalization, we may get to that, we may not, but you have in your seat a signed book. And then my most sincere appreciation to Marc and Teresa for taking time out of their extraordinarily busy schedules to be here with us today. These are two people doing amazing things to improve the lives of the students and the families and the people that we serve. And I'm excited for what we can learn from all of it today.
Thanks, Jackie and Eric and everyone at ISAC for bringing Marc here. I feel like you always, Jackie, find the right thing for us to read at the right time, at least for me, for sure. And so thank you for authoring such an incredible book that I do think is going to be life-altering for me, and I already know for the future of early childhood in Illinois as we take some of the lessons, both to the work we're doing right now to build an agency and thinking about, as we were just talking about, policy implications on how we really train on SEL. I will pause and say, there's a lot of tools in this book, a lot of lessons, some cliffhangers where I think we're going to get to, and but I'd love, Marc, to just pass it over to you, and maybe we can talk a little bit about one of the tools that you're excited about, the mood meter, which I marked as something that we should maybe think about for our new department's office space.
I'll be happy to send you a poster.
Great.
Well, hi, everybody. So I'll ask you, how are you feeling? Yes? All right, great language skills there. So we're here to talk about, obviously, my book. To be honest, my first book, which is called Permission to Feel, is where I kind of really flesh out the mood meter tool, because this project is really focusing on what I think is the master skill of emotional intelligence, which is emotion regulation. But I wanted to bring us backwards to go forwards, if that's okay. So there's a tool. Just for curiosity, how many of you have seen this before? A couple of you, or many of you. Yeah, some of you. So let me just give you a little bit of background on emotions and feelings and all that kind of stuff. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, nobody really ever asked me how I was feeling. It's kind of fascinating to me as I think back now, about the unpleasant feelings I experienced as a kid. So given that we were focusing on from early childhood all the way up to college, just to Now I sit here, as a 56-year-old guy who is a tenured professor at Yale, but I didn't, that wasn't going to be my trajectory. My trajectory did not look very positive as a kid. I was sadly sexually abused for 5 years of my childhood, from when I was 5 to 10. I was terribly bullied in school, to the point where I had suicidal ideation. I had an eating disorder. And so I suffered a lot as a kid. And there were no supports for me. There were no adults that recognized my emotions. No one taught me how to regulate my emotions. No one cared about the safety, neither physical nor psychological. And then one day, a beautiful person showed up in my life who happened to be my Uncle Marvin. My Uncle Marvin happened to be a middle school teacher who was by day a teacher, by night he was a trumpet player. And he was just this magical person. And I didn't see him that often as a kid, but he was very special. And then he happened to be going for a master's degree in counseling. He was transferring from being a social studies teacher to a school counselor. And it happened to be in the hometown where I lived. And he happened to stay with us one summer. And in that time, he was developing a curriculum to teach kids about emotions. And I happened to be his guinea pig. And so he would ask me these really cool questions, like, tell me a time when you felt elated. And I really couldn't think of many times. And then he said, well, what about alienated? And I thought to myself, how many weeks do you have to talk about that? And he was the first adult to ever ask me, literally, how am I feeling? And he was the first adult that I felt safe and comfortable telling how I really was feeling. Until then, I was eating my feelings, I was banging my head against the wall with my feelings, I was crying alone, I was doing lots of unhealthy things. So that's my early story. Fast forward, I go to college, I'm in therapy, and I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life, because I was struggling with other aspects of my identity. And I'm reading self-help books, and then I'm having this epiphany that all the things that my Uncle Marvin had done with me as a kid, there was now a field. There were people talking about this in terms of emotional intelligence as a concept, in terms of social and emotional learning as a field, which is, it was born actually at Yale. It really had its life here in Illinois, at the University of Illinois, Chicago, with one of my mentors, Roger Weisberg. Anyhow, I'm going to jump to this now, which is that I decided to pull my uncle out of retirement, and I said, let's write a curriculum. Let's get this thing written and available to schools. And we did. It took me years to work with my uncle. We had a 40-year difference in age. So it was he was retired, and I'm thinking about Dunkin' Donuts right now because he loved going to Dunkin' Donuts every day and have his decaf and his muffin. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm 25 years old sitting in Dunkin' Donuts eating, drinking decaf and having muffins with my, but whatever it takes to write this curriculum. Right. Literally, that's what I did. Anyhow, fast forward, I get this job finally after I get my Ph.D. in psychology, and I'm starting to test it out, and we're not doing well. It's not working. And I'm frustrated because I know in my heart that it works. And what I realized was the missing piece was the adult development. The adults were not prepared to do the work with kids, not because they didn't want to. It's because they never had an emotion education themselves. And so I work with other colleagues to build tools to support adults in learning about emotions, and that's where the mood meter came in. That going right for the curriculum was too much too soon. We needed to create a tool that would help build emotional self-awareness for the adults who are raising and teaching kids. And so the mood meter is a beautiful tool from my perspective because it's, it's kind of pretty. It's just like there's 4 colors, but it also is rooted in deep science that helps us take all the complexities. I don't know about you, but the last couple of years, I have had it, and I'm like an expert. I have struggled with knowing how I'm feeling. Anybody else know what I'm talking about? It's like I wake up and I'm like, I got all the feels, And it's like, what am I really feeling? So from a psychological perspective, Pleasantness says, basically, one core thing. Do I want to approach the day? Do I want to avoid the day? Do I feel safe and comfortable? Do I feel unsafe, threatened, or uncomfortable? So it's not about happy, sad. That's like the basic, simple version, which is not the way it's actually operating. It's really about, am I observing right now, which is what everybody does, every kid that goes into early childhood setting, whether it's a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, from when we're born, we're observing the world around us. We're trying to make meaning. Is this a place where I can be myself? Am I safe? Can I move forward? Or do I have to pull the cover over my head and be afraid? That's happening every day to every kid who goes to school. It's happening to all of us, even now as adults. So take a moment. Pleasantness. -5, you're thinking this is going to be the worst conversation you've ever attended in your life. -3, you're like, this is like everyday misery. 0 is, it's like anything else, it's kind of just like flat, neutral. Maybe you're at +3 thinking, yeah, it's going to be pretty good. Maybe you're at +5, you're like, Marc and Teresa, like roadshow. So where are you this morning? Just in your mind.
4.
You don't have to say it out loud. It's okay. Well, maybe that's what an early childhood kid, it's, just here. Psychologically speaking, what's going on for you? Now, emotions are not just in our heads, they're also in our bodies. So we have energy, we have activation in our body. Some days we wake up and we feel like, you've got the world in a string, and some days you wake up and you just feel like, I just feel so lethargic. Your body feels depleted of resources. So -5 would mean that you're just physically, mentally depleted. +5 is you got so much energy you can't contain yourself. I'm not getting a feeling like that. But. So what's your energy like today? Take a moment and think in. Yeah,
Classic Eddie.
Everyone's good? So we got yellow, red, blue, and green. So imagine you're in a professor like me teaching a class of 300-400 students. Imagine you're an early childhood educator and you've got your little kiddos that just came into the setting or to the classroom, and we're just going to do a quick check-in. So how many of you were in the yellow this morning feeling high energy and pleasant? Raise your hand. You were until All right, yellow people, raise your hand. High energy, pleasant. Okay, maybe 20 or so people. How many of you were in the green? You're pleasant, but your energy is kind of low. Okay, your hands are not as high. Anybody in the blue or red today? Anybody having a rough day? Yeah. Notice how I just want to point this out, and this is why the work is so important. That, there's some weird monitoring around, do I share that I'm not feeling happy? It's impossible to have a room filled with people trying to make a difference in children's and adults' lives that you're not struggling with something probably. A little, maybe a disappointment or sadness for today, or a little anxious or a little angry. But we're reluctant to make that public, even though we're feeling it. By the way, that has translated into early childhood settings. I thought it was like when we're adults we had our feelings, but I was in a kindergarten classroom just recently where a boy, he looked, I could feel his energy. He was low energy, unpleasant. And I went up to him and I said, how you doing today? And he goes, I'm in the blue. And I said, let's talk about it. He goes, I don't want to bother you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So already at 5, we were getting messages from the world around us that, I can't have unpleasant feelings, and that's a bother. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the worst thing we can do for a kid, is not help them with their unpleasant feelings. Okay, so we got most people in yellow and green, at least publicly speaking. You can be privately feeling how you're doing. What's the word? What are you really feeling? So take a moment and think about the feeling word or words. You have 3 seconds. Freeze. Give me an honest raise of hands. How many of you had a hard time finding the precise word? Hands up. Hands up high. Really stretch it out. Don't let it down. Pull it up. Look around the room. So a huge number of us, adults working with people, don't have the vocabulary necessarily. So that's one of my, one of the things I'm trying to push for is that we need to be self-aware. Because if you can't label your emotions, it's going to be hard to know what to do with your emotions. Last question for now. How many of you will get distracted at some point during this conversation? Great. It's like our dream come true.
There you go.
Our dream, our dream conversation, we work with people who are emotionally unself-aware, who have no attention. So if you're going to get distracted, what is your personal emotion regulation strategy to help you remain focused? Engaged. Who has a strategy? Someone? Yes, back there.
It helps me to focus on someone talking. I need to be kind of doing something with my hands.
Okay.
So I like to doodle.
Okay, you're going to doodle during the presentation. Thank you. You're allowed. All right, by the way, you're not allowed to laugh at someone else's strategy, just so you know. All right, so we have some doodling. Other strategies?
If I take notes and I'm actually looking at, reflecting back on what I'm hearing in my notes.
Yeah, so taking notes to help double process. Others?
When I start to get distracted, I try to push that off.
Okay, so what do you do?
So if I start to think about other things I have to get done, I'm like, push that away, focus here.
Okay, so you kind of self-talk? You say, worry about that later?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other strategies? All right, let's pause here because I want to make sure we have a good conversation. But how many of you believe that when you were growing up from early childhood till college, that you had a very strong, solid education in emotional self-awareness and healthy emotion regulation? It's not been part of our education. How many of you believe that maybe we'd have a world with a little less violence, a little more connection, a little better mental health, if people were more emotionally self-aware and had better strategies to deal with their feelings? All right. Now we have someplace to go.
We do. So appreciate it and thank you. I'll say, one of the challenges I found, having been in therapy for a long time, but for, let's say, the last several years, is we don't have the language to talk about feelings, right? You can say happy, sad, guilty. There's feelings wheels out there that I'm always, when somebody asks me how I feel, I'm like, what? Can I get a list? I don't have the vocabulary even
I'm going to give you an
process.
app in a little
I downloaded the app that's in this book. I just want you to know, yesterday I downloaded the app because it's true.
Yeah.
Having the vocabulary, you don't even have the words to process what we're feeling. So appreciate how we started, and I'm balancing, I think, two things. One is, I'm about to be in charge of programs that serve families with young children in those earliest years and how foundational this all is. And as a mom of a 5-year-old, really thinking about, how do we help them articulate their feelings in a way that I think many of us shared. No one talked about feelings, had the vocabulary for feelings. And what I immediately wanted to jump to as you started this conversation, which is policy, and the where policy and practice meet, right? We have folks teachers who write these tools make sense as a mood board in the classroom.
Or on the refrigerator.
Or on the refrigerator. It can get meta. Why I appreciate, Jackie, you bringing us all here is, can we as agencies in charge of policy do the work of implementing effective strategies and supporting effective strategies if we're not also processing our feelings and thinking about how our organizational structure and culture reflects that. So I'm wondering, you had your first book, you had a curriculum out there. Now you're talking about the adult strategies. There are many strategies in the book. Are there a couple that you want to highlight now that you've seen people be really effective at and using as they start to think about that intersection between their personal organizational practice and what they're doing for children in the classroom or at home?
Okay, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah. But I think, let me just take a step back and talk about policy for a minute.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a policy person. I inform policy through research and advocacy. I I personally, my dream and hope is that we will have policies that require schools to teach this work. I think that we need to reform education in a way that includes social and emotional development as a core element of a high-quality education. As someone who never had that education and got it older, as someone who has been doing research for almost 30 years now, I will tell you that these skills are highly, highly predictive of your health, of your academic performance, of the culture and climate of a school or a home or an organization, and they even predict longevity. Like, you will live a longer, healthier life if you can regulate your emotions. Secondly, is that there's a piece called co-regulation, which is about how we support other people in regulating emotions. That is the job of an educator. Whether we like it or not, that is the job of a good leader. A good government leader is someone who engages in healthy co-regulation, not unhealthy co-regulation. Unhealthy co-regulation is being dismissive. It's kind of like ignoring, telling someone to suppress their feelings, trying to be oppressive. That is not the definition of healthy co-regulation. The definition of healthy co-regulation is being emotionally supportive and helping people find the strategies that work best for them to achieve their goals. Very different thoughts. Now, in regard to policy, unfortunately, without policy, there's usually no funding. Even
Sometimes with policy, there's still no funding.
I know. I love those mandates that have no funding. Love it. Keep
Yep.
going. So but the hope is that that will lead to funding. But I do think we need to restructure education. If you really think about, I'll just say one last thing about that. So one of the things I say in my book, is that I would like to propose a redefinition of success, which is that success is not the size of your house or the how thick your wallet is or the prestige of your job. Success is being a well-regulated human being, having a nervous system that actually works for your health and well-being, and having intentional intention on being supportive of helping other people's nervous systems develop in a healthy way. Because we are endlessly co-regulating, whether we're conscious of it or not. Government leaders, parents, classroom teachers, any kind of person who's in charge of other people, your affect, your facial expressions, your body language, your vocal tone, the way you give feedback is a form of regulation. Does that make sense to everybody? But we're not taught this, and it's not seen as something like, oh, that's what I should aspire to be in life, as a well-regulated person. That's my vision, is that we gotta add that in. I mean, take a moment and imagine a society where that was the definition of success. What would be different in Illinois? What would be different in our country right now? You don't have to answer that, but you can think beautiful things.
There's so many places to go from everything that you just said, so appreciate it. I will pause the policy conversation. I want to
Sure.
come back to it at some point, because I think because you can pass policy, we have social emotional learning standards
Yes.
in Illinois for elementary children. Now,
Yes.
whether or not those are, how they're integrated and taught and
Correct.
is where the rubber meets the road. So I think thinking about the tools for adults makes tons of sense. And I want to come back to the work that you do
Sure.
with adults and professional development. But one of the questions I did have is to share more about co-regulation as
Sure.
a practice and how it's different from venting, which you talk about in the
Yeah.
book, and self-regulation. So can we just dig in a little
Yeah.
bit there? Great.
So co-regulation, as some of you know, starts from birth in terms of the baby is alive and the baby's crying or screaming or whatever's happening, and you're holding that baby and you are trying to bring that baby's nervous system down to a calm sense so that you're not activated. And so co-regulation is a back and forth. It's a serve and return process. And so I'm, basically, like you're doing what it takes, you're trying to, the warmth of your body, you're saying words in a very slow and calm voice, you are maybe putting on music, you are doing kind of whatever it takes to deactivate the nervous system of the child, which also helps to deactivate your nervous system. Because it's triggering for parents, oftentimes, that loud noise, and that makes your nervous system get activated. By the way, it's triggering as adults too, isn't it? In a relationship, if you're with someone who yells and screams and is not, right, you get threatened by that. I know parents tell me all the time when their kid yells at them, they're like, they just go into fight-flight mode. Like, get to your room. Who do you think you are talking to me that way? That's not co-regulation. That's called, like, I can't handle you. I don't have skills, so I'm just going to get you out of my face. Not helpful for building skills. So co-regulation starts in early childhood. We call it interpersonal regulation in adult world. And what that is being emotionally supportive. I'm going to go back to my previous book for a minute, because that book is called Permission to Feel. And the title came because I believe my uncle gave me permission to feel. But it wasn't a concept that I studied. It was a concept that I called it that as a phenomenon. Post writing that book, I've now done 70 studies. And my big question to people in the research is, did you have an Uncle Marvin? Or an Aunt Maria? Was there an adult when you were a child who created the conditions for you to be your true self? Now, this is done cross-culturally, people of all ages. And what I find is only about a third of the adults in our communities say they had someone when they were young with whom they could be their true selves. So 2/3 of us did not have an adult. Now, going to parenting for a minute, of the 1/3 that said yes, 50% of that 1/3 said it was a parent. Of the parents, 97% moms, only 3% dads. So very few people see their own father as someone who creates the conditions for them to be open about emotion. So we need some work in the dad area. In the research, I've gone further because I've been very curious about the characteristics of whether it's an uncle or a mom or a coach or a teacher. And there are 3 core characteristics of these people. They are non-judgmental. They are excellent listeners. And they show empathy and compassion. I wanted to say something about that because it's non-judgment, and I think in our society, I know that I feel like I was judged from the moment I came out of my mother's womb. It was, whether it's positive or negative, it's a judgment. But it's whether you're too dark-skinned or too light-skinned, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too chubby, you're too skinny, your nose is too big, your nose is too short, you don't speak the right language, you're too masculine or you're too feminine. I mean, it just goes on and on and on in terms of how our society starts from early on judging us about who we should be or who we're not. And that causes distress. It makes you feel inferior. It makes you feel like I can't be myself. And so the non-judgment always shows up as the top characteristic. Like, people are just dying to be around people. Just let me be me. Stop trying to make me into something else or whatever else. The listening piece is obvious, but I think people don't feel listened to.
I actually don't know. It's one of those things that I also marked in the book is
Yeah.
you talk about being a good listener. I don't know that it's always obvious. We talk about, like, okay, who's a good listener? You were very descriptive, and I wonder if you can walk folks through it,
Yeah.
or we can even read part of it, which is, like, what does it actually look like to be a good listener? What's happening to the person who is listening and showing up as a listener? Just because we talk about it all the time, like, be a good
Yeah.
listener, but actually, practically, tactically, this is the rubber meets the road, right? We just
Yeah.
share more about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, firstly, we listen with our whole body. We don't just listen with our ears. We listen through our facial expressions. We listen through the way we engage. So listening is a full body experience. It's not just hearing, it's listening. And so listening means I see you, I hear you, I can feel you. Number 2 is that I think a lot of us have been in situations where people are listening to retaliate. I have relatives like that. They're amazing. They hear everything I say, and they're like, now I'm going to tell you 100% why I disagree with everything you just said. I'm like, thank you very much, not interested. Firstly, I'm never wrong, but that's not real listening. Right, listening, when I'm listening in a conversation with someone, I'm listening through a lens of curiosity. So I'm endlessly curious about your experience, and I'm not biasing my listening through my experience. Like, I'm not thinking like, why would she feel that? That's weird. Like, that's ridiculous. She needs to toughen up. That's not listening. Listening is suspending the judgment, being fully present, and having that curiosity. It's not just passive, though. I'm not just so like for 2 hours. When you're being an emotional support person or a good co-regulator, I call it now in my next book I'm writing, an emotional ally. When you're an emotional ally, what you're doing is you're listening, but because you want to be helpful, you're figuring out, how do I craft a good question to help you go even deeper in your understanding so that you can actually build a skill yourself. Because one of the challenges that we find with these allies or the non-allies is the reason why they don't want to be an ally is they feel like they don't have the competencies. They don't feel skillful. They're afraid. The other one is that people don't think they have time for it, which is a problem. But the skill piece is important. So we have to teach some of the skills, but it's important to know that never does anybody ever say advice giver, problem solver, or fixer. How many of you want to be fixed? Nobody wants to be fixed. It's like, that's gross. Right? It's like, don't fix me. Like, fix yourself first. It's like I think what we want is someone to be fully present and to help us consider options. When I'm struggling, and I do struggle with emotion still, even though I'm supposed to be an expert, when I'm like, in my work, there's some controversy. There are people who don't like the work, they're criticizing the work, and I could ruminate about it a lot. I can get really down on it. It makes me like, maybe I should just, open a coffee shop and be a barista, which I like. It's another fantasy of mine. But in those moments, I could go, we have a concept, we say never worry alone. I could go spiral by myself and just say, like, it's never going to work out. The negatives are more powerful than the positives. Or I can talk with you, Teresa, and you would say things like, Mark, tell me about your impact. And I'd be like, we're in 5,000 schools. We've reached 7 million kids. And by you asking me good questions, I will start feeling much better about the work I'm doing because you're reminding me of the positives. That's healthy co-regulation. It's not manipulative. It's not telling me what to think. It's you being curious and asking me questions to get me to reflect on my experiences in ways that help me get out of the funk. Does that make sense? And so there is some skill in it. So good listening is good questioning also.
So many places to go, and I'll just say I think that it feels very informative just right now to hear you say those things, because I think we don't have not just the visual, which we'll come back to in a minute, but like those actual like model questions. We don't just not have the vocabulary. It's how we structure our questions in a way that brings the conversation, that co-regulation into being.
Yeah.
So can't wait for the next book. I'm sure Jackie will have us back here in that conversation.
I'll be 5 years older and 5 pounds heavier.
Well, and I appreciate it both as like, again, as a mom, but as a professional, as we think about, which come back to the venting as a non-healthy strategy. We're in a conversation with our colleague who's maybe in a funk, and I'll tell you this, like, as we're working across many agencies in the Gov's office trying to figure out how to get everybody to do the thing that we want them to do, you can get a little frustrated sometimes. And I'll just name, I was reading, I was like, some of our sessions are turning into just straight up venting, and they're not maybe being as productive. Can you share more about that?
I think it's a really good point. So now I'm going to bring up some of the controversy, because some of our critics say things like, we're encouraging kids to vent all day long. Like, we want kids to talk about feelings all day long. That is not ever. I've never written that. It's not in any of our curriculum, so I'm saying this to the camera. The goal, the goal of healthy co-regulation, or the goal of being a healthy human being, is not to talk about feelings all day long. That actually will cause us to ruminate. We don't want to be dismissive either, like, oh, enough. Like, that's not helpful. So it's this magical place in between where I say, tell me what's going on, and I give you a couple minutes to like share it because you want to, show that you care, and then I engage in the ally behavior, which is, Teresa, gosh, it sounds like you're really having a rough time with that colleague of yours. Let me ask you a few questions if you don't mind. And I say, how much time do you have to spend with that person? And then you're like, well, I only see them once a year. Oh, okay. Does that help at all? Just remind yourself that you actually don't have to be with this person that much. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm asking really creative questions to get you to see that that in that moment, that emotion that you're feeling about that person is like a toothache that's never going to go away. But I want you to know, because I know this from a scientist's perspective, that emotions are ephemeral.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know that. That today feels like a rainy day. I know that you've had sunny days. And so how do I build that into your kind of cognitive repertoire? So the goal of co-regulation is to be a good listener, but then also to help ask good questions to help you see there's a way out. I don't know about you, but I am someone who is prone to rumination. Does anyone else ruminate in the room? Anybody else worry about things a lot? Anybody worry about why they worry? Yeah. I've had a new thing. I worry about why I worry about why I worry.
Oh gosh.
And I'm like, Mark, you're doing fine. Stop worrying. It's like, But, and so that loop is dangerous because it just spirals. And, we have a tendency to want to vent. We have a tendency to want to call, like when I've had some serious things happen, like whatever it is in my career or personal life, I'll call like 5 or 6 people. Like, can you believe it? I can't take it anymore. Well, it's about like my Aunt Sandy, She's no longer with us, so I can talk about her. But, I love you, Aunt Sandy. But she was difficult. She was like this kind of like person who would be like, we'd have Thanksgiving at her home in New York City, and she'd say, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, the candles are on the table, I'm lighting the candles. She says, those are for the real company. I'm like, okay. And so we'd all like have this gossiping about Aunt Sandy. And if she would she could be really mean to some people, and then like we'd all like endlessly talk about, can you believe it? Can you believe it? I can't take it anymore. And it's like, that's a waste of energy. Like, that just makes it worse. So at some point, somebody's got to be aware, like, this is going on a little bit too long. We're not solution-focused here. We don't want to be dismissive, but let's realize that we only actually see Aunt Sandy twice a year. So, like, why are we giving her so much power? Like, don't give her so much power. Let it go. It's okay. You don't have to sit next to Aunt Sandy this year. You can sit on the other side of the table. And those are forms of emotion regulation strategies. Does that make sense to everybody?
Again, so many ways to go, and I am eager for your next book, and I want to talk about strategies in part because one of the first things I did with folks at ISAC, Sam will remember this, and Eddie and Jackie, when we did our technology of participation training, which maybe folks have had in the room, because I know ISAC has done that, just really getting very practical, tactical about the types of questions we ask, how do we structure our conversations, our meetings.
Sure.
So I'm eager. But you have a lot of strategies in your book, some which I mentioned when I came, when you think about yoga and you think about your breathing. I love yoga. I'm terrible at the breathing part of it, which is reminding yourself not to hold your breath. Will you share with us a little bit about those strategies, whether those are box breathing or some of your favorites?
Yeah. So the good news is that you got the book, so I don't have to teach you the whole thing. But there are 8 chapters of what I believe are the core strategies. And by the way, those strategies came from like tons of research about what we know from the research that is the most helpful to regulate your emotions. So they're not like my opinions. They're based on, every chapter has endless amounts of psychological science that proves their effectiveness. They all work. You should know that. They're not all for everybody at every time. Because what I need to give you is my fancy formula for emotion regulation first. So emotion regulation is a set of goals and strategies. It's motivated. Like, has anyone here ever intentionally avoided someone?
Yes.
That was fast. Has anyone here ever, don't raise your hand for this one because we're being taped and this is like a public thing. Anyone here ever had an extra alcoholic beverage to deal with a difficult situation? All right. Anyone here ever eaten a little extra sugary, fatty foods to help, themselves feel a little better in a moment? Anyone here ever doom scroll? Anyone here ever get lost in Netflix or any kind of movies to just like numb themselves and not kind of, yes? Raise your hand if you've used any of those strategies. Okay, so you're all unhealthy. But those are our automatic go-to strategies. We didn't have to get master's degrees in psychology to learn them. Somehow or another, we observe them in our childhoods. We see them on television, etc. And they're easy, and they do work sometimes. You feel a little better after that third drink. You do feel better if you tell someone to go blank themselves. But the problem is that you don't have long-term health and well-being. So people don't think about the long term. It's like we're so about getting through the minute or the moment. So, emotion regulation is about preventing unwanted emotions, reducing difficult emotions, initiating emotions that we want to feel, maintaining emotions that are desirable, or even enhancing emotions. The strategies are what I'll get to in a minute. But before we go there, I think it's important to know that emotion regulation varies. Our choice of regulation strategies varies as a function of three big things. The first is what we're feeling. So the strategy that I use, for example, when I'm overwhelmed, which I feel often, my unhealthy strategy is to ignore everything that's happening, not answer emails, which then, of course, gets me in more trouble with my office. But I'm just like, I'm done. Or it's taking a 5-minute break and going to look at the beautiful sky or the grass or the molding in New York City just to give myself some space to just not do. But when I'm anxious, it doesn't work the same. Because anxiety, I tend to be a ruminator. And so for anxiety, I need to really work on my self-talk. I have to say, Mark, you don't have control over the situation. You can spend all day long trying to problem solve about it, but even if you did, you are not going to be the person who's going to make the final choice. So just, why are you, let it go. Mark, let it go. This is not yours to do. And I have to do that self-talk to help me get out of it. So how you feel and the strategy you choose matters. The second is you have to know yourself as a person. So we are people who love people. I won't go into that song right now. But we are people who have personalities. We are people who have cultural backgrounds and differences, and other differences, whatever they might be, from gender to race to family upbringing, all important factors in determining what's best for us. So just the personality one. People think of me as being very outgoing. I actually don't like people. I'm only kidding. I like people, but I don't like to be around people a lot because I'm just not, I do a lot of public speaking and it drains the heck out of me. And so I need to do some alone time. I have to find my alone time. I share that with you because tonight, we have a long day today. Thank you, Lonnie. And lots of presentations, and so I will be I'll be like a basket case by around 7 p.m. tonight, or 8:30 p.m. I'm sorry, I'm not done until then. And so I have a choice. I can go out, I have friends in Chicago. They're like, come downtown, let's go for a bourbon and sports bar. I'm like, are you out of your mind? Absolutely, I will do anything to be if there were a yoga studio that was open tonight at 9 p.m., I would take the hot yoga class, preferably with nobody else in the class. And a teacher who didn't talk a lot. I just would want that ending to be deactivating. I know myself. Now, I would tell you that I often go against my intuition because I'm a people pleaser. And then I feel worse the next day. My point of sharing that with you is that when you know yourself really well and you can plan ahead, you think, what strategy, I'm going to be overwhelmed, I'm going to be exhausted, what is best for me, after the day is over?
I appreciate
Yes.
you coming back here because it is one of the things that I pulled out from this book, which is you share that we should make the connection between our feelings and our future. And I just found that very powerful to think about. And for me, how that sometimes shows up, although I'm going to get better at it after having read this, is when I think about our meetings that we have tons of meetings, right? And I think about, or an engagement with another agency or a different team, I have to ask myself, what is the outcome that I want from this conversation?
Yeah.
What am I trying to get done? And then what does that mean about how I have to show up or the agenda that I set? That might be, I'm really frustrated about this and I want to yell at this particular agency because I'm frustrated this is taking so long. But if actually what I want them to do is this other thing, how do I get them to do that? And then what does it mean for me
Yes.
to, how do I need to show up and how do I have the team to show up?
Yeah.
It just was a really powerful concept to think about. Okay, here is the future. How are our feelings, how is self-regulation tied to that? So I appreciate it.
Well, part of it is thinking about how do you want people to feel at the end of the meeting?
Yeah.
And so what is my strategy in the meeting to get them to that emotion state to achieve that goal? And that's where co-regulation is at the highest level as a leader,
Yeah.
because you can create the emotional climate
Yeah.
and do things in a way that support the experience of that emotion.
I appreciate that so much, and that does go back to our technology of participation. Have people had the top training in here? The technology of participation training. One of the things that sticks with me, and I don't know that we have language, but I think this supplements it a lot, is not only have a rational aim to come out of the meeting, but to have that emotional aim. What is it that
Yes.
we want people to feel?
Well, because
when
how they
come out?
feel, it
Yeah.
reminds me, so let me just share with you a little story. I did a project with the pop singer Lady Gaga. It was one of my big claims to fame in my career. And we did this project together that we call the Emotion Revolution, where we collected data on about 50,000 high school students across the United States, and looking at how they felt in school and how they wanted to feel in school. The top three emotions they said they felt were tired, bored, and stressed. 77% of the time, tired, bored, and stressed. And we did multiple studies for this. How they wanted to feel: engaged, inspired, energized, excited. So, big discrepancy between how they felt and how they wanted to feel. I do this big study, and this is back a while ago, different administration, and I got invited to the White House, to Department of Education, to present the findings. It was a big study. And so I had to decide, what was the emotion that I wanted the Secretary of Education at that time to feel in the cabinet during and after my presentation? So I could have gone in the yellow and been like, hello everybody, my name is Marc Brackett. I am so excited to be here to share with you the data, that kids are tired and bored and stressed. Right? Like, a little weird. I could have gone in and been like, Mr. Secretary, maybe we should start the conversation with a deep breath. That might have not gone so well.
How did you start the
Well,
conversation?
I'm going to tell you. I could have gone in the blue and been something, I've been around for a while doing research and looking at how it informs policy. The truth is, like, nobody reads our research. And the truth is that, let's evaluate education reform efforts. Not a good place to begin the conversation. And then I decided actually the best emotion was passion with a little anger. And I started my presentation with, respectfully, I need you to hear what I'm about to say. Do you know that 77% of the feelings that our high school students feel every single day, from the moment they walk in that door till the end of the day, they're tired and they're bored and stressed? Please explain to me how that is a recipe for creativity and innovation. Please explain to me how that is going to build our nation, into a place where people have inspiration, where they're doing good for the world. And so I decided to not be like, because a lot of people misunderstand. Anger does not mean you have to be dysregulated. You can be very channeled with your anger, and we need anger in our society. There are a lot of things that are not going well in society, but we have to use it wisely to achieve our goals. I felt like I wanted them to leave my presentation thinking, that guy's got really amazing data, that this is terrible, we have to do something about this, as opposed to, that was a great talk. Do you see the difference?
Yep.
I was strategic about my co-regulation, or my hoped for co-regulation.
It's, I think, a wonderful story, and the applicability to our work, I think, is really clear about how we go into meetings, what we want folks to take away from those conversations. And I immediately want to figure out how we partner with our state superintendent and think about, how do we,
Great.
are we asking, and maybe this is in your work with Castle and
Yeah.
professional development, are we giving teachers the tools to say, hey, let's set emotional aims. Let's think about
We
what
are.
we want. So tell us more about
Yeah.
your work with educators.
So, the Ruler is the name of our center's approach to social and emotional learning. As a field, we call it emotional intelligence because that's the skill set that we really focus on. And so the mood meter is a million classrooms probably have this tool. It's all over the world. I'm proud to say that, my uncle who, is an amazing human being who inspired me, who was a pioneer in SEL before it was called SEL. What he did in one classroom in the Catskill Mountains of New York State is now, we've reached about 7 million children in 5,000 schools across 33 countries. And endlessly, that's when it, talking about strategies, when I get really a little depressed about the pushback and I just take a deep breath and I'm like, Mark, last night I gave a speech and a mom just jumped up out of her seat. She's like, I moved here from California, but my daughter went to a school that used your program for 10 years and you don't know what it did to our family and how it transformed her. And it was that's what I want to hear. That was now I can sleep. So, but what Uncle Marvin did back 50 years ago at this point, right, life changes, the world changes, education changes, so we needed to create systems. And when I learned, and I'm giving you the 20 years of failure here in 1 minute, was that state superintendent needs to understand this really well. The people who have the most amount of power need to understand the concepts really, really well. That's either a state superintendent or a superintendent of a district or a school leader or a teacher or a parent. The adults who are raising and teaching kids have to understand these concepts really, really well. We cannot just give them a book and say, do it. That's not good quality professional development. Good quality professional development says, I'm going to be a role model as your principal. I believe in this. I'm going to show you that I'm working on these skills. I'm going to work with you to develop the skills for your own healthy development. And I'm going to help you implement this with the highest amount of quality for long-term sustainability. That's a big difference, right? So we start with tools like the mood meter to build emotional self-awareness. I'm going to show you at the end an app that we have that can help you do this for free. We have a tool called the Emotional Intelligence Charter, which is a credo or an agreement, and it asks people, you can do this, by the way, in your office, have a conversation. How do we want to feel when we come to work each day? Every school that does Ruler, the faculty and staff have a conversation about the emotions they want to experience at work and what they can do together to create that feeling. The classrooms do the same thing. The third tool we call the meta moment. The meta moment is our tool for self-regulation. And a big piece of that meta moment is helping us all become the best versions of ourselves. So I would ask you, Teresa, in your role, how do you want to be seen? How do you want to be talked about? How do you want to be experienced? In your role professionally, and I might even say as a wife, as a mom. And getting you to think about that is really important. It's what saved me when you asked me earlier about my mother-in-law. So when in my opening of the book, I have this story about my mother-in-law and I had a huge fight during the pandemic because she moved in unexpectedly, and and she stayed for 7 months. And so it was she was supposed to come for 2 weeks. It's Irene, I am going to find a billionaire to fly you home, which I did not find because all airlines were shut down. It was a mess. But after I was dysregulated, I went to bed. I went up the stairs, and I said, Mark, you actually are the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence. How are you going to show up tomorrow morning? Yeah, there's something radically wrong right now. You are not in a great place. You need to remind yourself of who you want to be and how you want to be seen and talked about. And I realized that I wanted to be more compassionate to her. Carrie was an 81-year-old woman who was displaced from her own home. I realized I needed to be way more patient with her. She didn't want to learn how to make coffee with the coffee machine. And I'm like, growth mindset. You know, you can, you know. And it was like,
Landed real well,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
so I was like, all right, you can make her a freaking cup of coffee. You're like, what's the big deal? Like, you're working from home anyway. And so those kinds of things were important to me. It radically transformed our relationship because I actually became curious about her. I realized I was so selfish. It's like, you're in my house and, you know, you're making my life more difficult. And I realized that, you know, here was this woman who was afraid of getting COVID, who couldn't see her own dog in Panama, couldn't go home. I mean, it was awful for her. I wasn't showing empathy and compassion.
What's interesting about that story, and this is the cliffhanger, because he talks about how he goes to bed angry, and then we're like, what happens next? What happened? But what I appreciate about what you just said, and I'm going to connect it to, and I know we're almost at like our 1 hour time, and we'll open it up to questions.
Sure.
After maybe two more
It's okay.
quick
No one else
here.
has anything to do other than listen to us.
Right,
talk
that's
about
right. Is the connection between your emotional regulation and your future.
Yeah.
Even in something like thinking about who you want to be to your mother-in-law, right? A little bit of like the relationship that you want to have, how
Yes.
you want to live. You're thinking about, here's how I want to be seen. It's a little bit
Yes.
of about you and about her and being
Yes.
curious and like helping that. I mean, did I get that right? Does that
Yeah.
seem right? And
Well,
not
it's
just-
your ideal self.
Yeah.
And so it's the self that you personally want to be, but it's also the self that you want others to see. And they both matter.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're aligned, sometimes they're not aligned. And so, and they're different for different roles.
Yeah.
Like my best self as a presenter is I really think it's important to have humor. Humor does not work at home with my partner. Like, looks like you're in the red tonight, honey. I'll give you a red. You know, it's like, so like you got to be mindful. Like it doesn't work with everybody, and so you got to figure out like in my role as a professor, being as a leader of a center. I have 35 staff. I have a lot of very smart people who are motivated and want to do hard work. But just because of personality, like somebody might get more attention than someone else just because. Just because. I have to be careful about that. Because I don't want to create a feeling of inequity. I don't want to create a feeling of favoritism. So my best self as a leader is I'm really careful about providing feedback kind of across the board to people in a way that makes everybody feel positive and good.
I mean, if you could write a book about that, that would be great. In part because systems are people, and I think about, I love to use humor. We use a lot of doodling and fidget toys. Our office is full of pipe cleaners. And how to support an organization that we think is incredibly important for delivering for children and families. How you do that internally to make sure that those dynamics stay aligned, right? And folks don't get burnt out or they don't feel,
Yeah. You can set, in schools, what we recommend is that leaders and teachers set best self goals. And they revisit those goals over the course of the year. Not every day, but every couple of months. Like you said, you wanted to be more compassionate, more patient, more connected, or whatever it is. Like, how's it going for you?
Yeah.
And also have to look at the barriers. Oftentimes, the emotion regulation strategies that are in the book are used to deal with the barriers to being your best self. So, for example, with educators and parents of young children, I'm trying to be my best self, but it's like the first 5 minutes of the morning, I fail. And I say, tell me about your sleep. And then I realize that they have no fuse. Their fuse is so short because they haven't replenished. They haven't gotten good sleep. You can't be your best self if you don't have the cognitive resources to do it. So you got to go backwards sometimes. Just to wrap up in terms of the strategies, I'll just go through them very quickly to give you a heads up. The first one is just a shift in your beliefs about them. I can do this. This is learnable. You have to know that it is. I promise you. You were not, going back to Lady Gaga, you were not born that way. This is a learned set of skills. 100% learned. 100% learned. And it is practice and refinement across your life. The second is you got to build a language. That's why we have the app. That's why we have the mood meter. The third is you got to do the breathing. Sorry. I promise you, when your 5-year-old is having a tantrum, the breath is going to help you.
Okay.
Without the breath, you're going to go to mama reactor. But mama can take a lot more of the crying when she's deactivated her own nervous system. The third are the cognitive strategies. because of the gaslighting that I think many of us have had in our lives, because of the negative self-talk that we have that comes automatically to us. I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, this is ridiculous, I can't take it anymore. You've got to stop that negative chatter, and you've got to figure out a way to be more productive with your self-talk. The other piece of it is you got to find those emotional allies. You got to find your Uncle Marvin. It's never too late. It could be your best friend, it could be a colleague, it could be anyone, but we need to be around people who allow us to be our true selves. We have to sift through those friends and figure out who is that, emotional ally. The next one is all about the biology piece, that sleep, the nutrition, and the physical activity, really important. And then finally is I ask all of you to think about, what do you need to be the best version of yourself? So I know that I need quiet time. I just know that about myself. I need time to I actually, believe it or not, this may sound strange to some of you, but if you look at my calendar, which is, I'm very calendarized, just because that's the way my career is right now, but I will intentionally have a block on my calendar that says, think. It sounds crazy, but I have an op-ed that came out yesterday in Time magazine about emotion regulation. It was something I worked very hard on to write, because the first one I wrote got smashed. People attacked me, you're telling me we're overreacting, we're underreacting. And I said, that's interesting. I took all 30,000 of the comments that were trying to I analyzed those, and I wrote a rebuttal and said, I'm not telling you to smother your feelings. I'm telling you that you have to regulate them so that you can achieve the goals you want. Let me be clear what this is. So I feel very proud of that piece. But I needed time to think about it. I just needed time to just take a walk for 15 minutes even, and just be what am I thinking? What? The creativity doesn't come from, the creativity comes when you give yourself space, when you're taking that walk. I assign that to my students. I'm I'm not assigning you to go to the library till 2 o'clock in the morning. That is not going to help you. I'm assigning you to go take a hike. That's when the best ideas will come to you. So my question for you is, do you schedule your well-being time? This weekend, do you have that little yoga class, that little walk, the bike ride, that just sitting in a coffee shop by yourself, having a cup of tea and reading a book? Whatever. It doesn't have to be anything that costs any money. It just has to be the time that you do the things that bring you some pleasantness. And so all of that together, all those different buckets are what help us to be a well-regulated person who can help other people be regulated too.
I so appreciate that and the strategies. I might block out think time from mine, and I'll tell you, well-being is the first thing that gets sacrificed,
Always.
right, when we are in the middle of doing our work. I want to open up to questions. I want to just hit on one last thing, which is I appreciate you naming power. And what you have me thinking about right now is about our, not agencies for administering programs, but where we feel like we have agency in our lives and our meeting structures, and what we think we have agency to change, and really bringing those two things directly together. What do we have power over as teachers, as children, as policymakers?
The micro communities.
Yeah.
Let me say one. So I have this podcast that you should all check out. It's called Dealing with Feeling, where I interview leading psychology experts, but also entertainers. One of the entertainers that I interviewed was, his name is Duff McKagan. He is the bassist from Guns N' Roses. And at the end of my podcast, I ask everybody, imagine a world where everyone has these strategies. He's like, dude, that's too much for me to imagine. He's like, I'm trying to work in my neighborhood. And it was eye-opening for me, because I am a bit of a grandiose, I want to make the world a better place for every
100%.
child. And I can't help myself. That is in my DNA. But I'm endlessly disappointed with that big mindset. And so, going back to what I have control over, how do I support my team at Yale? I have, the 5,000, we had a conference Monday and Tuesday at Yale where 250 of our schools came together to work together to think about best practices. That's impact. And I sometimes fail to appreciate that impact because I don't feel like the larger impact is happening with all the different things that are happening in society. But you can get lost in that. It's not a healthy strategy. It doesn't mean I don't care about it. I'm going to fight for the injustices for the rest of my life, but I'm going to fight the hardest in where I have the most amount of control and hope that grows and grows and grows and grows and grows.
Totally agree. It is the long game here, too. Excellent. Well, really appreciate it. Open up for questions. Folks have them.
And we don't have a mic, so you're going to have to talk loud. So stand up and talk.
All right. Hi, my name is Ruben. A core member here for ISAC, and essentially our work is just near peer mentoring for high school seniors, like for entire post-secondary, right? I'm mainly based in the south side of Chicago, and I've been reading the book actually throughout the entire week. And middle of part 3, great stuff, having fun.
Thank you.
But essentially, like I would say, like the number one emotion that I do see with my students is fear.
Yeah.
And so my question is, like, for me reading it, because I'm not in the strategies part yet, and for anybody else who's going to read it who does this work as well, is there a concept or a strategy that you would say would apply to the work that we do, that we can, like, from an outsider's perspective looking in? Because it's hard to think about it when you're actually in it, because I'm in it. So, like, from an outsider's perspective, would you say there's a concept or a strategy that why we should, like, take a look at when we are reading this book?
Yeah.
Well, firstly, thank you for sharing that. B, they say it's fear. I'd want to know exactly what they mean and what the cause of that fear is. And once I understood the cause of the fear, I would see if is it fear? Because fear is now, like right now, there's a dog biting my leg, like, and that's fear. It's in the moment. That's different than anxiety, which is future-oriented, which is different from overwhelm, which is saturation, which is different from stress, which is, having 5,000 emails and no one to help me respond to the emails. So getting that clarity is important because it will help you guide them to help you be a healthy co-regulator. So I would say that's the step one, is just to, like my own students who are living in very different circumstances, they all say they're stressed, but their real feeling is envy. They're endlessly on social media, they're endlessly looking at everybody else saying, you're better than I am, you're smarter than I am, you're more successful than I am, you've got more whatever. And so the strategy to work with envy is really different than the strategy to work with stress. Same thing with the people you're working with. Try to figure that out. And then also, I think, given potentially some of their circumstances, try to help them think about like a strategy that's easy, that's available to them, like the social support, the self-talk that they're having. So you'll get to that, in the next section. But help them be really clear about what they're feeling and help them understand what they really do have control over, and then provide them opportunities to really think about that more so. Thank you.
What I appreciate about your question, your response and the question, and then if there are other folks who have questions, is, having been in therapy for a long time, we talk about feelings wheels, so I'm eager to dig into your app. It is kind of the hierarchy of feelings, like what comes under fear, what are the things that flow into fear, really being able to unpack and articulate it when we don't have the vocabulary. So I think digging into the app, I am incredibly excited to do so.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yep.
Sorry, my name is Mary Wood. You made a comment about regulating your feelings, especially when dealing with something where you don't necessarily have outcome or control over the outcome. Can you talk a little bit about assessing the tipping scale between maybe having the ability to give input to what that output might be and knowing when to back off? Because you might not be the person making the final decision, but you are maybe at the table to voice a concern and you just see that they're going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So this is where like getting to know the person that you're the co-regulator with is so important, because some people are more open to suggestions than other people. And that's good for you if you want to help guide them on their strategy. What I'll say is that there are endless techniques. There are not endless strategy buckets. So, for example, I have a good friend who is going through a pretty bad divorce. They are divorced now. And I'm going to play around with this story so that I'm not being taped and disclosing it. So a friend going through a divorce, and his former wife was abusive. And but the person who is now alone is feeling lonely. and missing the family dynamics, and they have 4 kids. And so this person called me a few weeks ago and said, I don't know what's worse, to be, painfully alone, or to be with a narcissistic, crazy person. And so I couldn't say, like, come on, like, you really, you want to go back to that? Which is what I wanted to say. Say that, the judgment, you have to be, even if it's validating, it's still judgment. So what I did with this particular friend is I said, can you remind me about, let's just talk about why you decided to get divorced from the first place. Bum, 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 bum. And then I said, so how are you feeling right now? Are you out of your mind? There's no way I'd go back to that relationship. So it's always best for the person themselves to figure out the solution, not to be the teller. You can, if you know, like, in the back of your mind what you think is best for them, you can play with it, with the questions, but they'll see if you're being manipulative, so you have to be genuine. But B, the goal of healthy regulation is for self-discovery. And I want to really point that out, because that's also the confusion in the field, because people are thinking that teachers are imposing values and imposing. No, this therapy. I appreciate, because I've been in therapy too. Therapy is when you're struggling with something that's private, and you go see someone in private to talk about it. If you need that, go for it. I think it's a fantastic and important thing for many people. That's different from the teaching of the skills in a classroom setting. It's universal primary prevention. Every kid who goes to school walks in that door and says, I want to be here, I'm afraid to be here, I'm comfortable here, I'm not comfortable here, nobody likes me, everybody likes me, I understand what I'm learning, I don't understand what I'm learning, I'm lonely at lunch, nobody wants to pick me to be on the team. Those are real life experiences that don't require therapeutic intervention. They require schools to take seriously how kids feel, and they require teachers in schools to take seriously creating a positive culture and climate, and it takes schools taking seriously the skills that kids need to manage those emotions of fear or anxiety or frustration or whatever it is. But it's not that we are telling the kid how to regulate. We are opening the door to what research shows is effective for self-regulation, and we're making that available for people of all backgrounds to choose and use in their lives. Please.
I may be asking stupid questions because I haven't read your book yet.
That's not stupid anyway.
So I have 2 questions. One is, and I don't know about the app, but I know that.
Oh, we're going to show an image. Can we do that, please?
Oh, that would be great. Is the app for kids as well?
Not really. This particular one is for, this is, by the way, if you go back, how many of you, anybody here work in schools? Okay, so if you're a school person, just check out our center's website, which is just, you can go to my website, marcbrackett.com, and go there to make it easier. And then go to the next one, please. So this is the app. It's called How We Feel. And you can see there's the mood meter. You can tag your feelings for who you're with, what you're doing, and where you're at, so that you start seeing, oh, I'm in the blue when I'm with this person. you know? But that's important to know. Or I'm in the yellow when I'm doing this. Then you can actually use an AI function, which is not, it's the goal of the AI in the app is to help you think more deeply about your experience. So if you can say, I'm feeling angry because I have to go to work today, and then it will say things like, well, what is it about the work that's making you feel that? Like, it's just giving you reflections. It's not telling you what to do. Then there's strategies. So a lot of strategies in the book. I co-created the app. So there's the breathing 4-7-8 breathing exercise. The graphics are amazing because we have the best designers in the world from Pinterest. Then you can track, you can look at patterns, so you can get a kind of an output over a week or a month to see where you've been living emotionally. And I built a whole course too that's in there. So that's the app. And next slide. And that's the web series, where some of the people you may know, like John Haidt, who wrote The Anxious Generation, he's gotten a lot of attention recently. Lisa Damore is an expert in adolescent mental health. Dawn is my former student who's now the deputy superintendent of all schools in Harlem, New York. That's Steph McKagan. That's Dr. Alfie, who's an expert in Black mental health. Jewel, the singer. Angela Duckworth, the author of the book Grit. So really interesting people from various backgrounds, all sharing, what they know about emotions and emotion regulation.
Then you had a question.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm glad you shared that because that's really helpful. I wondered, with kids, I have two questions actually. One is, I know that like in cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy, one of the sort of really helpful things is, you can create a little card for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I do. Here are the strategies that I have that are very concrete when I get triggered. Like, here's what...
Yeah, same idea.
Right. Is that something that, like, kids have? Is that part of...
It's an option. It is. Yep. So that would go along with the meta moment.
Okay.
And so it would be, my personal plan. Because you have to, the meta moment is a global tool for managing your emotions. I think I actually have a slide up there. Can we go back? Did I put it in? Keep going. Yeah. So that is my toaster child. Can't help it. And we always say, if you don't take a meta moment, you're burnt toast. So step one is sense. You're feeling the emotion, the shift in your thoughts or your behavior or your body. The second is the pause button where you do that breathing exercise. The third is your best self. And the last one is strategize. And so what's helpful is that for a kid in a classroom, if they are, let's say, activated or triggered by a particular classmate or a particular subject area, they can write out their go-to best self strategies for that and have that, available to them. And the teacher would know that. Sometimes it's the teacher being the co-regulator, noticing the shift and saying, remember your strategy. So, yes.
And then my second question, and I'll stop asking questions, is what are the tools that students are given to recognize emotions in others?
Yeah.
To start to learn to be emotional allies?
Yeah.
It's a really good question, and I want to share a little bit about the science of that. It is overrated because we are masking our emotions a lot, especially as children in schools, especially when we're of different racial and ethnic backgrounds. The rules are different in South Korea than they are in Chicago. The rules are different in New Jersey than they are in Papua New Guinea. And so we tend to overestimate our ability to read people. We learn this through, in my opinion, very bad curricula. I hate to say it, because we create caricatures of emotion. We have this is happy, this is sad, this is mad, this is disgust, this is fear. I mean, how many of you have ever been in a meeting? Let's be honest, right? Where someone has felt disgust. You're really irritated in the meeting. You do this.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably very
yesterday.
uncommon. It's very subtle. And then, so if you take culture and race and gender and development all into consideration, the only way to really know how someone is feeling is to have a relationship with them. And so what I want to teach people to do is listen. What I want to teach people to do is ask the question, how are you feeling? And seeing how people respond and make sure they're authentic in that response. With that said, the more data you have over the course of your time with someone, the better predictor you're going to be of their emotion. But we're always guessing. We're not knowing. Does that help?
Yeah, that's right.
I work with DCFS, so I investigate child abuse and neglect, and kind of going with your opening of asking kids how they feel.
Yeah.
And also just getting situations where someone has killed themselves in their family and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I guess what is your recommendation for the person who is hearing these traumatic things to help them take care of themselves? Because, to do it day in and day out,
Yeah.
you can't
It's very
really
hard.
feel everything. and then wonder if I'm normal for not feeling this. Like,
Yeah, I appreciate
how
that.
do you kind of refresh yourself and deal with that?
It's hard, and you have to know that. I mean, it's God's work to do that. What I will say is that the cognitive piece will really help, and the scheduling your well-being piece. And but the cognitive piece is important. Is can you look at it from another perspective? So I work at at a medical school, and I work with cancer doctors, and by definition, most of their patients die. And so it's really hard to be a cancer doctor. You become like a rock. And that when I did training for the nurses and the doctors in the cancer hospital, they're like, we're just rocks. And I'm like, well, can we make them like softer rocks? And so what I recommend is the self-talk isn't, I didn't save this person's life, I'm not competent, the drugs are not working. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere. It's going to make you a very unhappy doctor. But if you can frame it as something like, I'm showing up for this person and making the last few days of their life the best days of their life. What a beautiful thing, right? To be able to see your job as someone who is helping someone leave this earth, feeling as if someone really cared. So I think that's the work. You have to figure out how to do that for yourself, have that mindset that I'm doing a job that so many people would not want to do, they wouldn't have the courage to do, and that I am, providing the best possible supports for the people who need it the most. And just use that as your mantra, and then have a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maggie, your question? Maggie and then Paul.
I can't really right now, so.
It's okay.
I promise you're really holding to have a hot second to sign it, if not.
Lonnie will make sure I sign it.
I'm a psychotherapist in the community. I've been doing this work for roughly 17 years, but that's not a lot, and we don't know it all, right? Something that I notice a lot in therapy sessions with clients is, especially when someone's coming from backgrounds of like domestic violence, sexual assault, really tough things, we're teaching them to essentially love themselves, right? Getting that emotional literacy, gain their emotional literacy, relearn safety, and all of that, right? Sometimes what occurs is we overcorrect in a sense of safety, and this doesn't have to always be those, like I said, sexual assault, issues, right? But we overcorrect in the sense where now I'm avoiding doing things that make me uncomfortable because I can recognize, a boundary, right? Or something is being crossed. How do we help encourage the work that needs to be done around those things when we have the stress tolerance, when we're trying to build accountability for those things and not necessarily just avoid something that makes us uncomfortable, because there's so much growth sometimes in those in vivo experiences or
So I think that's part of the mindset work, which is that the goal is not to not feel anxiety. Life is filled with anxiety. The goal is to be able to be with anxiety and be with fear and be with whatever emotion you're feeling. But the one thing you're making me think about is the power of reflection about regulation. So we do, every one of the strategies in my book can be used as a helpful strategy or an unhelpful strategy, right? I used to study Zen meditation and breathing and do a lot of meditation work. I was a psychologist when I was doing it, and I would see a lot of people there kind of sitting on the cushion, escaping reality. And so you can use meditation as a form of never engaging in the world around you and just say, I'm dedicating my life to self-awareness. That's an excuse for you. For other people, I'm just giving it one example of choosing a strategy which is actually an avoidance strategy, which is looks like a healthy strategy. Same thing with physical activity. I can't tell you how many people, I used to be a fitness instructor at a gym, and I'd watch people on the treadmill for 6 hours. I'm like, that is not good. You are avoiding the difficult conversation with your partner. Get off the treadmill, build the skills, and go home and and go get the divorce. But my point of sharing that with you is that I'm going to give you the best example. There's a fine line in self-talk that's helpful and fine line in self-talk that's self-deceptive. So you can gaslight yourself. Do you see what I'm getting at? And so we have to, once in a while, check in with ourselves and just ask ourselves, how is this strategy actually helping me live the life I want? Is it helping me with my relationship? Is it helping with my well-being? Is it helping me make best decisions? And what I'm hearing from you is that oftentimes people start adapting strategies that tend to be they're starting to work against them or not as helpful. And so if you see that, now's the time to ask them to really just, remember the goal you had was to do X, Y, Z. Let's talk about how that new way of strategizing is leaning you in that direction or actually pulling you away from it. Does that make any sense? It's a big piece because it's amazing to me. Like, I can't tell you how many people everything's fine, it's going to be okay, but it's not okay. And so you can pretend that that's a positive strategy when it really isn't. And so it's okay, but are you achieving the goal you want? I have a lot of young people that say, it's okay, I'm getting through it. And I say, but it's been a couple of months, and let's see, is that thing that you want so badly happening? If not, let's think about that a little bit more.
Okay, Paul, you will be our last question, and project so we can hear you.
My question is, what's your selling point to an individual or a community that's reluctant to pick up a book like this or even have a conversation?
Go give a presentation. Mean you, not me. I'm happy to help. But there are, I think, it's funny you say that because we're starting to make a film about this work, because I was giving a speech in California and this filmmaker was like, dude, I'm not going to read your book, but I'll go to the movies. And I'm like, great, let's make the movie. And so you do have to think about it. Like, sometimes it's podcasts, sometimes it's books, sometimes it's films. I don't have an answer for you other than once you understand the concepts like that are, let's say, in my book, given if you know that community well, like, use your creativity to think about the best way to reach that community. Is it small groups with people to share the concepts and get people to think about it? There's no one way to do this. It is a creative process. Yeah.
I think that was a perfect question for us to end on. So I want to thank our guests, Marc and Teresa. This was amazing.